We don't think the same. And the person that you love has a different brain, different body. They're going to process and understand things at a different speed. We don't take enough time and space. We just have to see, how do we each work?
Hey folks, welcome to the Brilliant Body Podcast, a forum to learn about and liberate the brilliance of your body and ultimately to expand the meaning and experience of intelligence. Join me, Ali Mezey, and other body masters to explore pioneering and varied perspectives on what it means and feels like to be embodied. So many people feel disconnected from their bodies due to emotional or physical pain, or even conditioning and lack of education. Others feel quite at home in their bodies, yet want to learn to have more pleasure, awareness, and access to the body's guidance. This podcast is for everybody. Each one of my trailblazing guests has studied their own bodies and others' bodies for decades and will share their expertise and unique mission, how to thrive as a body. So join us and reclaim your body's brilliance.
For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Ali Mezey. I am a long-time, 4-decade body worker and sexologist. I'm a family constellation worker. I was trained by Jane, among many others. So whenever anybody's interested in studying constellation work, Jane is the person I send people to. I've learned tremendously from her about, of course, family constellation work, but other things in life and love and partnership. I'm currently in her partnership training right now, which I so highly recommend. And we're going to be focusing on that particular topic tonight. And I am also the creator of Personal Geometry, which is a very streamlined and efficient way to work with people and the brilliance of their body, and specifically the language of spatial relationship, which in part was very much inspired by Jane's Bodies in Space. And the other thing that really takes a lot of my time is the Brilliant Body podcast, which I created about a year and a half ago. Jane's been a guest on that, though we weren't speaking about being coupled at that time. I think this is a more recent venture of yours to have created this consummate course on how to live, thrive, and even just survive for some of us in couples. So I had really wanted to bring Jane back in order to discuss this topic and make sure that you all know about her course, and also record it for an episode of the Brilliant Body podcast. I'm going to start by asking Jane a few questions. And after she answers those questions, which will certainly morph and take us in new directions, we're going to open it up to the floor to all of you, and you'll be able to spend the rest of the time asking Jane questions. I'm going to give a bio of Jane Peterson, since some of you don't know her. Jane is a PhD and draws upon a broad intellectual background, from chemistry to the fine arts, from shamanism, NLP, and hypnotherapy to cognitive neuropsychology, human communication, somatics, trauma, and attachment theory. She has a PhD in human and organizational systems and is a certified infoscion.
Infoscion. You almost got it. I'm practicing.
From 2001 through 2015, she traveled and taught systemic constellation work in several countries. Jane served for 9 years on the faculty at the Systemic Constellation Intensive in Germany, where I had the great fortune of meeting her there, and 6 years as a consulting editor and advisor to the Knowing Field Journal. Jane founded the Human Systems Institute in 1999 and continues to teach and consult using constellation work and her own relational embodied somatic approach. In 2016, she and her husband established a small permaculture farm near Portland, Oregon. And she has just, as I said, launched this brilliant class about living and thriving as couples, as being in a couple. That's where we begin, Jane. And my very first question to you is, so what do you see that most people get wrong about partnerships?
Well, three things come to mind. The first thing is that at the beginning of a partnership, we don't ask enough questions. We kind of hope that love will conquer all, and that somehow magically, because I'm attracted to you, our values, our life goals, and our purposes will somehow magically align, which doesn't always happen. The second thing is that we don't necessarily know ourselves well enough, and we're not always willing to reveal our own values or goals. And we might not know our own coping strategies and family of origin patterns or our own deal breakers. And so we don't actually communicate enough, usually at the beginning of a relationship, because we're trying to put our best foot forward. We're trying to be liked and approved of. And so these things will bite us later. The other thing I find is that people have beliefs about what relationships are and what a relationship should provide them. And if I believe that there's a right person out there, or you're my soulmate, or as I said, love conquers all, kind of the Hollywood version that we've been sold, that is going to lead to disappointment. And disappointment can become blame and resentment and can slowly sneak into a grudge because we weren't really courageous enough or skilled enough to know how to really be honest and check each other out at the beginning. I mean, marriage is this kind of a contract. It used to be a contract, the marriage contract, and it was negotiated. And we have a kind of romantic view of relationships that often gets us in trouble later. And we don't really appreciate how much work a relationship actually is to keep it alive, to keep it functioning well. Bert Hellinger used to speak of caring for desire, that the initial attraction isn't going to hold us through the difficulties of life. And we have to actually work at relationship. The philosopher Alain de Botton says, compatibility is ultimately an achievement of love, not a precondition. So putting any two humans together, you're going to have differences, and it's the ability to negotiate those graciously and to make sure that we don't have a deal breaker sitting at the bottom, kind of hidden in our relationship. Because when we get down the road with each other and find these things, it's really painful. And couples will often kind of create these repeating patterns where they are really trying to avoid an issue that is going to break up the relationship. And the other thing is we don't really have the skills that we need for modern marriages and modern relationships. It's not like he's the breadwinner and she's the stay-at-home mom. We're kind of thrown into this situation where we have to figure it out for ourselves. And society doesn't give us those external supports. There's not the church and the family and the roles that were there for us in the even 50, 60 years ago. So we're really having to bring a whole set of collaborative skills and team building skills, management skills, really, to relationship that doesn't fit our model, our romantic model of how relationships work. And so down the road, we get surprised that things are harder than we thought.
Yeah, it's been my experience and also my observation that people tend to relate to each other at the age level, the maturity level, and the skill level at which they met.
Mm-hmm.
And unless people are really making a lot of effort to keep growing and maturing as individuals and as a couple, people tend to stay pretty much relating how they met at the beginning of their relationship. I don't know if you agree with that.
Well, there's a reason for that. There's actually a reason why we do that. And that is because conscious mind is actually a very high energy consuming thing. Our brains take a lot of energy. And so for us to actually be present and pay attention to that evolving person that we're with, that takes really conscious, deliberate effort. And most of us are, we're lazy for a good reason. We automate all kinds of things. So we automate walking and eating, and we also automate people. We're going to automate that person so we don't have to think. We're going to make a simplified story of them, so that we don't have to keep understanding who they are every time. We don't have to kind of meet them afresh every time that we are around them. So there's a natural tendency that we have to automate and simplify, just so that we can handle the cognitive load of that other person. And I forget where I read it, but somebody said by the time people divorce, they've stopped seeing each other. They have a simple story of that person and they don't know them anymore. And so there's a natural tendency towards that we kind of have to deliberately counter.
Mm.
to stay fresh with each other.
Yeah. And as I know Esther Perel writes about in Mating in Captivity, and you and others speak about too, is the extent to which we do automate our relationships and think we know our partners really is proportional to our erotic
Totally.
state.
Right. Novelty is very exciting. And by the time we think we know our partner, we know how to do this, we've stopped saying them. We've just kind of acclimated. I mean, this is a good thing for us as humans that we acclimate to our environment, but it's not such a good thing for relationships because it means that we're not really staying present and not really discovering the depths of that person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's some advantages to dating in later life when you finally know yourself so much better and you know what you're looking for. And
mhm,
yet, time, of course, that can work against you because you can have too fixed
right,
ideas about what it is
right,
you need when perhaps isn't the case at all. But
right.
anything you want to say to those of us who are older daters?
Yeah. By the time you have some road time and a few scars, right? A little bit of scar tissue there. You are a little tougher, hopefully, and you are more willing to, I think, be honest at the beginning of a relationship because you know the costs if you aren't. And I think that's a strength, actually, of dating older. You're clearer about what you can tolerate and what you can't, and what fits in your window of compatibility and what might not fit there. So I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's still harder in some ways. The scar tissue does sometimes get in the way.
Another question I wanted to ask you, Jane, because you're such a body oriented person as well. How our bodies guide us, help us, or hinder us in helping us choose and navigate partnership, and not necessarily just in the sense of what we're sexually attracted to in people. Perhaps the familial and instinctual and intuitive understanding that our bodies hold. And what do you think about our body experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, kind of a lot. I think a lot about that. So there's a number of points I would make. One is that I think we think of our mind as being who we are. And yet so much of what we do, our behavior, our experiences come from our body, come from the experience and the life that we've had in our body. And I mean that in relational terms. I don't mean like, yes, I know how to do certain things with my body, like I'm a seamstress or I'm an artist or something like that. Those are skills. But I mean the kind of patterns that our relational interactions have imprinted on our body over time. That's why I coined the term social soma. And that is that our body is shaped so much by our relationships. Our baseline expression, our facial expression, our postural habits, our gestures, even breathing patterns are going to be shaped by the environment that we grew up in. So if I have a critical parent, I'm going to armor, and that armor is going to come into my intimate relationship. Or I may have developed a scowl because, things were difficult in my childhood. And that's going to be my resting face, which my partner's going to have to interpret. So the art of seeing the person in front of you as being in these long histories of relationship. Like it may not be me that face is looking at. It may be that my voice reminds you of your mom. So we're all made up of these different interactions that have really shaped our responses as a human being to another human being. I like to think about this too in terms of like energy management, like tension versus relaxation. So the quality of your relationship is going to be partly determined by how much energy you have to put into it and whether or not it's a safe space for you. If it's a safe space, you're going to be relaxed, be breathing well. You're going to have more tolerance for the ups and downs of life. If you don't feel safe or you don't feel safe coming into the relationship, that's going to give you a smaller bandwidth to work with because some of your energy is involved in managing all of that. So how our bodies show up in relationship depends a lot on the relationships that we had, how much awareness we have in self-regulation and self-management tools we have, and what we're able to do with the other person. And feeling safe, feeling like I can entrust my body with you and that you will treat me with kindness, that's critical. Because if I don't feel safe, I'm going to tense up. Fear makes us tense. And if we're tense, we're already activated. We're already partway towards fight or flight. So being able to understand that part of our task as a member of a couple is to keep each other safe and relaxed physically, and to be mindful of those old patterns that are going to show up because they're imprinted in the body. And they're going to be kind of automatic unless we can become aware of.
As a sexologist working a lot with sexual trauma, of course, that really shows up with the degree to which we can even feel our own bodies and whether we're available for pleasure with the person we're with, even if we do feel safe with them. As you just said, all that history and relational experience, a body may not be responding to even the person they're with. They may be numb, not to the person they're currently with, their beloved partner, but numb to all that all that came before. And of course, a partner can really take that personally. So I love what you're saying about how much history is showing up as the body in relationship, and that as partners, we can so easily misinterpret that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a set of photos that I think show the effective experience in relationship on our body so well. There's a photographer named Lalage, Lalage, Snow, just like snow. And she did a series of photographs called We Are the Not Dead. She was embedded with British troops in Afghanistan. She took a set of photos of the soldiers before they went in, some of them pretty young, while they were embedded, and at the end. And what shows up for most of us is the at the end. That's when we meet somebody. What's so remarkable about these photos is you can see the impact of that experience on the face at the end of the person's tour. And that's true for all of us. Like, we've all been through stuff. It shows up, and it shows up in our reactions, the way our body moves in space, the way our body relates to other bodies. So if we are not aware of that and we don't actually understand how much of an impact that has, we aren't going to misinterpret each other.
As you're also speaking to, we can also heal each other in relationship, and we can soften our tissues and our grimaces and our distance and fear and numbness and all these things. Can you talk more about what goes into having and being a healing partner to someone else?
Well, I think Stan Tatkin's work is really lovely here because he makes the point that if we're going to be safe in relationship, our top priority has to be taking care of each other. We have to really be willing to make a commitment to the relationship so that it is, however you set that up. I know some people are in poly relationships, but however you set that up, we have to be willing to keep each other safe and to recognize, to learn our partner. I had some friends that was the second marriage for both of them, and when they got married, they gave each other the owner's manual. So one partner said, on page 42, here's how you do me if I do that, basically, right? So that it's like, this is how I work, and this is what I know about myself, and I want you to know that. If I get dysregulated, you know how to help me. And likewise for you, I want to know that about you. So we need to kind of become partner whisperers and really take care of this precious thing that we're making. I have this lovely lesbian couple that I've been working with, really beautiful. And they are so intentional and so mindful about the thing that they're creating between them. Like, they manage the space between and the environment that they live in. There's a book that just came out called The Social Biome. And Terry Reals used the term the social ecosystem. We're making, out of our little interactions day by day, we're making the environment that we're going to live in as a couple. And when we're mindful of that, it makes us stop maybe and be a little kinder, a little more careful with our partner and with ourselves in terms of what we say and do. And that over time has big consequences for the kind of environment. That becomes a healing space, a trusted space. I feel like I can bring myself to you, warts and all, and you will accept me. You will work with me. I can be accepted and belong here. And that's a huge part of healing. When we get that sense of like, I'm okay, I'm enough for you, so much in our body begins to relax. And I think the healing really is relaxation. We put the armor down. We don't need it anymore.
It makes me take a breath just hearing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to ask only one more question and stop being greedy and hand it over.
Okay.
You talk a lot about being on the same bus or not being on the same bus.
Mhm.
So, what about when you're with somebody who you feel so good with and you feel relaxed and there's this beautiful healing connection and symbiosis, and yet you're not on the same bus together either because you want children, the other person doesn't, or they want to retire and you want to keep working, or you want to live in different countries, or, you know,
Mhm.
or you just have deeply different values or different politics or whatever. Can you
Mhm.
talk more about people who either are in denial that they're not on the same bus, don't even know they're not on the same bus,
Right. Yeah.
how to deal with it if they do know they're not on it, and what to do about it?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with what we expect from relationship. So, I mean, there are people that you're going to walk a period of your journey with because during that time, your needs or aims are aligned, and you may not make the whole trip with them. And the other thing I would say about that is if we think we're going to do the whole journey and then we find out that we're really going in different directions, we don't know how to grieve. And it's so important for us to be able to grieve together when something doesn't work out. That's going to be able to help us heal. So I think it's the expectations that we bring in, like you're going to be my forever person. Well, maybe. That's true for all of us, right? We change as human beings, things happen. So it's really like, are we committed to that? Is that our top goal, or do you have another one? And the thing is, once we get down the road on a bus, when we find out that, oh, no, you want to steer the bus that way, and I'm not going that way, the cost of breaking up a relationship is higher. And not just to us, but we may own property together, when we have children, our families and friends are involved. So we're actually changing our whole social ecosystem when we take this thing apart. And because that's so difficult, I think we have more of a tendency to just do it violently rather than mindfully and lovingly. We stay on to the point. Bert says it really well. We'll stay in a relationship, even if we're suffering, until the cost of that separation and the harm we might do to the other person is outweighed by the needs that we have. We're going to pay a price for what we're going to cost somebody else. And so we'll stay into the point of bitterness and anger rather than recognizing earlier, like, dang, this is not going to work. We're not going to do this. So we are way down the road. It's costly. We've been suffering. They've been suffering. It's hard not to part in bitter ways and difficult ways.
How much do you think that's because of the stigma of,
Mhm.
of parting? And
Mhm.
as you were saying, the romanticism that basically came to the fore, 200 years ago,
Right.
a romantic period when people were only living to 40 years old.
Right.
Now, to have a lifelong marriage, people often do because, again, that is the paradigm that we were raised with, or many of us were anyway. And yet, maybe it's not so healthy to do that. And say, I love that it can be a success to just acknowledge we dated 8 years or
Right.
18 years and we did what we came together to do. And
Mhm.
frightening. We don't like change a lot of.
No, Stan also points out that it's really helpful for a couple to have a purpose, to get clear. Like, why are we together? We don't ask that question very often. I think that's to our detriment. I also think that we can approach relationships now with a framework that's not very helpful, because if we're asking the question, what can you do for me? And are you doing it? It's always going to put us in an evaluating kind of mode. If we're asking a question instead, what can we make together? What can you and I create together? And what is our purpose for being together? We approach the relationship very differently, rather than, are you satisfying my needs? That's a one self system view anyway. And I hate to tell you this, but couples are always a two self system. So the idea of what can we make together? What are we creating together? What is our purpose? And reviewing that, this couple that gave each other the manuals, every year they'd sit down and say, are we still on the bus? let's talk. What are we doing? So they were really adjusting things as they went, which I thought was a brilliant move.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, but that's a different model of relationship, as you're saying, Ali, than the model that most of us get and that Hollywood still is promoting. So it's a very different model, but I think it's a more realistic model for our times, especially since people are so mobile. Like, I met you in California, you're in Scotland, People move and change and grow. We're not in little villages and stuck in roles. We have opportunities that we've never had as humans before, I think.
Yeah, and more women are financially independent.
In some places, we have control over reproduction and our own income, and that has been a game changer. That was a huge social experiment. Birth control has been a huge social experiment. It's given women power in ways that they haven't had before, which has changed the basis. Now we're peers. I don't depend on you for my food. We're peers. There's a whole different set of skills that we need. And actually, I want to make one more point because I spent some time studying self-managed companies. I wanted to know how an organization worked without bosses. And I came up with 3 principles. And then I realized that these apply to relationships too. And the 3 principles are: we are each sovereign. We're peers. We can't tell each other what to do. We can try. Sometimes that doesn't work. And we're in each other's care. We're sovereign and we're in each other's care. It's the paradox of manage both of those. The second one is make a contribution. Both of us have to contribute. And do everything you say you'll do, or there's no trust. It's easy to put your hand up and volunteer. It's another thing to follow through and make sure you do it. And the last one is our purpose is clear. And my purpose aligns with our purpose. And that's kind of to your conversation we've just been having here. We have to have these things in place and means to manage that for a relationship to succeed over time. We don't have a lot of that technology. So where do you see that? Where do you learn that? You don't learn that in school. Your parents may not have modeled it. Where are you going to get the negotiation skills, the collaborative communication skills? Where are you going to get that in order to be able to do this? That's actually why we built this course.
Yeah, because most of our models are hierarchical too.
Yep.
So what you're describing is entirely different.
Yeah.
So you may have just answered this, but we're going to open it up now.
Okay.
Can you articulate what the healthy, effective, and skillful model and principles are?
Can I update my question since I'm learning as we go? First of all, thank you, Ali, for your podcast and the wonderful work you do in the world. And thank you, Jane, for really innovating. What really struck me was the social soma. And so all that conditioning, all that imprinting that shapes how we operate in the world. So I'm curious if you can describe this unhealthy operating system. How do we take in the data, process, and respond? And what is this new model of yours? If, assuming that the soma was loving and caring and nurturing and blessing us, and then our operating system would be one that can respond healthily and skillfully to the world. So I would love to hear those 2 models from a kind of inside out, how we engage with the world and what happens on the inside and outside.
Okay, that's a deep question. I'm going to do my best to get my hands around it.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it. So the unhealthy model, I think the thing I would say about it is it's unconscious. So all of these things, from the time we're a little one to being a big one, we've absorbed these things. So this is how we think the world works. And oftentimes it's when we get into a couple or we get into a relationship that we find out that somebody else has a different idea and different automated habits. So there's often a clash, but that's actually, if we can understand that that's a point of discovery. Like when I engage with, if I have a close friend, if I have, somebody I'm living with, an intimate partner, I'm going to discover my differences. I'm going to discover myself in a way. And if I can take that as oh, I didn't know I had this automatic, but I automatically got angry when someone questioned me, or I automatically defended myself because my mother used to, I hear everything as criticism. If I can take that encounter with my partner as an opportunity to learn because our differences will help me discover myself, then I have the opportunity to do something different. If I'm not aware, I don't have an opportunity to make a different choice. So once I can begin to say, okay, I don't want to respond that way. This is a good person. I don't want to respond that way. Now I have the choice. I can start to say, what is a better way to respond? And things that we know about healthy systems are that they are fair. That's a big one. We have an innate sense of fairness, that they're fair, but what fair looks like depends on the two people that are negotiating it. They're kind. They're generous. Like, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to approach you. It's like, you didn't mean to hurt me. I'm hurt, but I'm going to assume that you didn't mean to hurt me. I'm going to approach you as like, did you know? Like, let me tell you what happened. They're based on a willingness to go deep with the other person, to really try to understand them, to recognize that that other person is the same as me. They have feelings, they have thoughts, they have experiences. So we're really moving, in most cases, from we grow up kind of with the one self-system view. We're a little kid trying to survive in a family. And the transition is to actually have a two-self mindset. That whatever I'm doing, I have to keep track of you too. And I'm willing to do that because you're doing it for me. So this is what I mean. We're each sovereign and we are in each other's care. And we're intentional about that. So I'm going to be looking out for you. And you're going to be looking out for me. And I have stretched my mental capacity to hold you in my mind. I'm willing to do that for you because you'll do that for me. And that's a bit of a stretch for most of us. We're used to looking out for ourselves. And we're at least in the United States, we are like the poster child for individualism. We're the extreme in the cultural measurements for individualism, but Western culture has become very individualistic. So it's a stretch for us to go, I'm holding you too. There's two of us here. And what we're making together is what's important. So I hope I answered your question. So from the inside, it's a stretch because I have to keep in mind you.
Yeah, no, you totally answered my question because I feel it in my body, just the narrative and the gentleness and the kindness. And it's like, that's not what I'm doing in my relationship. I think what really struck me was it's sort of like when the breakdown happens, that's the beautiful moment versus the breakdown happens and let me get argumentative or aggressive or let me try to outthink my partner versus I'm sovereign, I'm generous, and let's care together. So yeah, no, thank you for your beautiful work. My wife and I need your course. So thank you.
Sign up. Yeah. I mean, this idea of being right, and because it's very natural to protect the self when we feel threatened in any way. But that means we're seeing our partner as a threat.
Yeah.
Right? And so we want to do whatever we need to do in our relationship to mitigate that. Stan talks about falling on your sword. Like, I did it, you're hurt. I'm not going to argue. Because if I do, we can sort out what the details are later. But if you're in trouble, I'm in trouble. It's the metaphor I like to use is we're in a canoe. Now you think about being in a canoe and what does it mean to be? What's going to happen to that canoe if you both are paddling in different directions? If we're in the same canoe, we got to figure this out. And if I banged your elbow and you can't paddle, I better stop and take care. It's just a really different mindset from what we've been raised with. It's so different. And yet it feels so good to be in a place like that, where I know that if I hurt you, I can repair. If you hurt me, we can fix it. And it turns out when you look at secure functioning, if you look at all the videos of the moms and the kids, right? We have zillions of hours of this now study. It's not that people are in resonance. They used to think that babies and moms were in resonance, like that that beautiful, that beautiful synchrony. They used to think that that was a lot of the time. It's like 30% of the time, and you still have secure functioning. What happens is there's a rupture. The kid gets sick. Mom gets to the phone, whatever she's making. There's a rupture, but there's a speedy and effective repair. So when we break, which we will, things are going to happen. We're different people. It's the repair that makes the secure functioning. It's fast. It's reliable. We're going to fix the relationship. Then we'll sort out the details. That's the wearing each other's care part. And that's not something most of us think about. We're like, how dare you? So the emphasis is on repair and return to the relationship. So thank you for letting me get into my soapbox. I appreciate it.
Great, Devo. Thank you for that. I want to really emphasize something you were both alluding to as well, which I just heard somebody complaining about today, about that they aren't able to really tell their husband a variety of things that are either bothering them or what they need, because the husband interprets that as criticism.
Right. Yeah.
And what to do about that if you actually know what you want and need, trying to communicate it, but the other person becomes so defensive because, again, rather than viewing it as an opportunity to be able to expand and even serve your needs or meet your needs or please you or whatever, they just go into that defensiveness. I'm inadequate. And
Right.
That's if I feel inadequate.
Yeah, then they get angry with it. Yeah, so I've learned something in my years, and that is that the conditioning, that men face harsher conditioning on that than women do. So men face quite harsh conditioning in terms of, like, if your wife isn't happy with you, it means you're a failure. And if you're a failure, you're going to feel ashamed. And if you're feeling ashamed, you're likely to get, one of the ways to deal with that awful feeling is to be aggressive and to push back and push it away. So I see this really not uncommonly. It can happen for women as well. But this kind of like, I have to be, it's still there. Those little roles and rules, they haven't died. So they're still there, and they put a lot of pressure on men. So when a woman wants to approach her partner, they need to reassure them first. They need to say, look, you're a wonderful husband. You do such a great job. There's so many things that I admire about you. There's something that I need. I wonder if you'd be willing to help me with it. I wonder if you'd be willing to, I'm going to let you succeed with me. This is what I call making your partner successful. Give them a way to help you. And that's a different approach than what's wrong with you and bothering me is this. And I personally am guilty of that one too. I know that one. We get irritated and we're just like, Arr. But if you think about how you'd like to be approached, yeah, you're great, you're good. And there's this thing I need. Maybe you don't need it, but I need it. Would you help me? It's a beautiful, beautiful little way to approach somebody. You can help me. And then they get to be successful at helping you. So that's one way to deal with it.
Love it. Anybody else want to ask a question, either out loud or in the chat? Nice. So encourage you to take advantage of this brilliant woman font of information and wisdom here.
I hope we didn't answer all your questions because there's a lot of there.
I could keep going. Yeah, Karen, please go for it.
Okay. Maybe, Jane, you can talk a little bit about that juncture when one or the other of the partners starts feeling like you might not be on the same bus. And yet there's so much love, so much tenderness, sharing history, all the things that you talked about in terms of building up that social world together. And how do you know whether that navigation means repair and return, or whether that navigation where you're at means, wow, maybe we're really not on the same bus. So then what do we do? How do we navigate that? Like you said, with consciousness and love, and not just like, or even sabotaging and creating some drama that steers everything off course rather than dealing with really happening.
Yeah, the hard part is that we may end up sacrificing something really lovely. It's a cost benefit. This is kind of practical. But we don't always know when we start to sense that our bus is heading in a different direction. We're not sure if our partner can make this turn with us. We don't always know if that's possible. And because it's so scary to sit down with somebody and say, hey, I have this feeling and this is what's going on for me. Can we talk about it? We tend to do all that other stuff that you just described so beautifully, all those little human behaviors. So, if we have built up the pattern of being able to be honest with each other, the pattern to be truthful, because really the first question is, partner, I'm changing. Can you accommodate this? Can we find a way? And that takes deep understanding. That takes really patient, deep inquiry of what's behind that? What's going on for you? How does that play out? What does that mean for you? What happens for you, partner, when this is happening for me? That takes some time. And when we're in a little bit of tension or distress, we don't want to take that time. We just want relief. So it takes the capacity to kind of hang in that uncomfortable tension and know that creativity can come from that. That we may at first think, well, this is your view and this is my view. But what I've seen with partners is that when they can really go deep and really seek understanding first of like, what is happening for you? What is that doing for me? Let's give this time and push it back and forth for a while and see what's going on. That people are amazing. They can come up with creative solutions. Like, we'll live part-time in France. Okay, I can do that. I can spend the summers in France with you.
Sharon likes that one.
We can find, but if we don't. We try to go to a solution because we're uncomfortable. It's what Arnie Mindell used to call sitting in the fire and being able to stay there in the tension with all that love that you've built up, with the belief that the other person is capable too. And to see, what can we make of this? We're changing. What can we make of this? And how far can we go? And what are you willing to do? And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? Sense making and meaning making of our experience is really where it's at. And that's more malleable than we may think. That we don't know until we get into that deep conversation with the other person and really give ourselves permission to set aside what we think we're desperately wanting and just listen and understand them. And vice versa. Out of the understanding, deep understanding, new possibilities can emerge that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. So it's just staying in it and trusting that other person to be honest as well. Yeah, it's hard. Chivo has a hand up.
It's interesting to me, Karen's beautiful question, so human, but I could already sense the tension, the hesitancy in Karen's body. And then, Jane, your answer, the context, the process, and I could see Karen's body soften. So to me, it's how we are so caught up in our models where we think it doesn't work. But again, I think that that's why your model works, is because there's a different way to hold this, to process. And as you said, sense and meaning making. And we go straight to meaning making. We bypass the sensing, which is more the embodied, the nervous system, the relational. So yeah, just I think you modeled this works is, I guess, to be able to have either the teacher, the facilitator, have a embodied lived experience where you can speak from and hold somebody compassionately and with care. So I think even just this little conversation back and forth, I wanted to appreciate, and also to acknowledge Karen and to see that her body softened. So there was already something that entered Karen just from this back and forth. I wanted to name that too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to also speak to what I see very often, which is how difficult it is for many couples to talk about sex. And that what they often are most missing, or one of the main things they're most missing, is not just that communication, but sensuality, particularly as our bodies age, our bodies do or don't work the way they used to, our hormones change, and sensuality becomes missing more than ever. Because, of course, we know there's sensuality missing in lots of relationships and with ourselves. So I think it's so important to just speak to this, because when you're talking about our couples on the same bus, they might be a whole lot more interested in staying on that bus if they were getting touched and being able to communicate their physical, sensual needs. Because without that, how do we feel relaxed and safe and nurtured and seen and fulfilled? So what do you think about all that?
So I think it has to do with each person's language. They talk about love languages. But I do think, we're all individuals. So like I have one couple in my practice where she's a brilliant woman. Her mind is really something. And that's where she gets stimulated. And her partner's not like that. And so it's been a struggle for them to understand each other. Like, hey, what's a turn on for me is to have a conversation about something that puts me in the mood. And for the other partner to understand, like, oh, it's not just touch. So it's really, we have to see, how does that person work? And I think we are Well, there's some studies, really interesting study, little study that was done where somebody counted how many times two friends touched during a conversation in different countries. You may know this one. And in Puerto Rico, it was several times in an hour. It's a very warm culture. It's a very touch-based culture. In the US, it was like twice at moments of excitement. In the UK, it was not at all, I'm sorry. So some of it is we're touch deprived in the West. We live in human-built urban environments and have a very heady kind of minds on a stick culture. And if you add that basic cultural deprivation and you put that in an intimate relationship, and we don't even really necessarily know how to foster sensuality and pleasure in each other. If we think about intimacy as pleasure, and that what brings us closer to our partner and makes us want to need them more is that they offer us pleasure, like we're a source of pleasure for each other, that's a really different view. How do we do that for each other? How do I please you? And how do you please me? And what exactly is going to work? And it's evolving. So to your point, Ali, I think the sensual, and also Tivo, the sensual, the literal sensual physical experience of living in a body with another body, that's an important component. And I think it's often skipped over, like in couples therapy, how they talk to each other. And one of the things I really appreciated about training with Stan is he put you in the camera and he looks at how you interact with each other. What do you actually do with your partner? He'll actually set you up in postures and poses and things that involve physical contact in order to see how that's working, because it is so primary. It's so fundamental. It's just not a mental thing. It's a fundamental thing. It's like a physical thing. So you're making an excellent point there. It's so important.
Even though the partner who is more intellectually engaged, that may or may not be from an innate
It's possible.
language. It could be, as you were speaking about before, that's her history, that's her culture. That was her deprivation, perhaps, as a child. And so that's what further accentuated that love and capacity she had. It might also just be that I'm biased because my language is very clear from just the question I had asked. So there's two wonderful questions in the chat.
Okay.
Would you say the marriage can be restored even when she's saying a constellation, but I would think even a conversation or people show one partner doesn't want to be married? So she's asking specifically about a constellation, which you may want to refer to, or in general. One partner doesn't want to be married.
So I'm listening very carefully and I'm asking, is it marriage or is it being together? Because those are different things. And what concepts, ideas about what marriage entails, like restrictive ideas, I'm guessing, constraining ideas, is the one partner bringing to, like, I don't want it, I don't want this. If it's a question of, like, I don't want to be with you, that's a different question. If it's like, I want to be with you, but I don't want this legal stuff and all that that brings, that's a difference. So one person wants the legal stuff and the ring and the whatever, and the other person doesn't want that stuff. Now we have two people who have a relationship, but nobody is an island. We're sitting in a larger social context. So what does that mean to one person to be married? Really, down deep. And what does it mean to the other person to be married? Because we might have two very different places that we're thinking about what that institution, that social structure actually mean. So I would want to dig deep on either side. What does marriage mean to you? What is your felt experience of that? When I say that word, what happens in your body? How do you respond to that? It might mean safety and security. It might be financial. It could be all kinds of things, because so many things in a larger social context are tied to that. No couple is an island. As much as we might like to put a little bubble around us, we're all hooked in with social systems someplace, family, church, whatever it is. Those things are going to bear on the relationship. And this is an example of that. And so sometimes it's really helpful if we're both really hot on the topic, we're both, struggle about it, to have a third person help with the deeper inquiry and the mediation. See what is it that each one is trying to accomplish with the stance that they're taking. Like one person might say, I need autonomy, I need my sovereignty. And the other person is like, I have some scar tissue, I'm not going to trust unless I have the legal agreement. That's where we start. Now we start an inquiry from there. We try to understand what's behind that. How did you get there? What does that mean to you? What does your family say about that? And then we can begin to unpack that.
And I just want to add something, Jane, that I believe is an echo of something I'd heard you say, which is just because a representative in a constellation who is representing your husband in this case is reporting that they don't want to be married
Is not a reason to get
worse.
No.
Reps can be inaccurate. Reps can be expressing what your suspicions and fears are. So
And they're interpreting too. They're interpreting the meaning of their experience. So by the time they find words to put on that felt experience, they have put like divorced or something or not married, when it may be like, I want my autonomy. I want more of a sense of independence or something like that. Yeah, we have to be careful with constellations and reps. And I appreciate that you're pointing that out. I think a lot of times when I need to see what's going on, I will set reps up blind and I will watch the body movement. And that initial movement, when the reps really sink into their roles and they're really in touch with the field of the person, the real energetic, that gives me more information than the interpretation. Because I'll see from the movement of the bodies in relationship to each other, even that first initial movement, which way are we turning? How are we orienting? What's pulling? What's outside that's also involved in affecting that couple?
I want to also ask about infidelity, Jane.
Okay.
Anything you want to say about fidelity, infidelity, polyamory, monogamy, conscious monogamy, with all these different newer configurations of they're as old as the hills, and
Right.
cultures value different configurations. So just curious if you want to add that in.
The simple thing I would say is, what's the agreement? What's the agreement? Are you keeping it fresh? Or do you continue to negotiate it? The big problem is, did you break an agreement? Because then the trust will be broken. If the couple says, okay, we're going to do this, is one person being coerced? Are we going to open the marriage? Is one person being coerced because they're afraid they're going to lose the partner? It really takes some down and dirty, like really going deep and being vulnerable and exposing yourself to your partner at deep and intimate levels around those kinds of changes in a relationship or even those kinds of setups. And we have to realize that there really needs to be a trial period, because we're not necessarily going to know how we're going to be in a certain experience until we're there. So if couples try to solve the problem and put a period on it and permanently set up a new configuration or something like that, without saying, okay, we're going to try it for this one and see how we do, and we're going to stay in contact and we're going to really talk. We're really going to be sharing honestly. Because we're afraid. We don't want to be seen as jealous or possessive. Just feel in your body how those words land. Jealous, possessive, controlling. Whereas it might be like, I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if I can feel safe enough if you're with another person. That's a different conversation. For poly kind of couples, communication is super, super important. Ongoing, clear, honest communication, and that takes so much courage. It takes so much courage.
And anything about infidelity, and if trust has been broken, the repair?
Trust has been broken. The person who has been, for most of the people that I've studied in my own observation, the person who has not been a participant of breaking the promise, the hardest thing I think for the person who has experienced their partner being unfaithful is that they no longer trust their own sense of reality, especially if they didn't see it coming. Like, my partner's been stepping out for years and I thought this is what was happening. And that's really destructive. when I don't know what's real anymore. So it usually takes the person who's on the other side of the infidelity really a good long while to sort out and rebuild their story of what happened and who that person that they're with is. And then they're in a position to decide, is there enough here for me to continue? And how would we create an agreement that I could believe? And the burden is on the person who broke the agreement. If we have an agreement that we're faithful and you just decide to do something else unilaterally, you've violated the basic principle of this is a two-self system. You've done something on your own unilaterally that is not part of our agreement. Then that person is also going to have to say, can I keep an agreement? Do I trust myself that if we agree to something different, I'll do it?
I'm surprised that you just said the one that is not participating, who didn't participate,
Mm-hmm.
because in my experience and in my practice, it isn't a single system.
It's not. No.
And it could be that one partner has turned away because of work, or one partner,
It's mismanagement of thirds, right?
down, or
Yeah, sure, there's reasons for the infidelity, for sure. But not always because the person is unhappy with their partner, surprisingly.
yes,
Right.
I found that too.
Right.
It's the broken agreement.
It's the broken agreement. It's not necessarily that the partner stepped out. It's the agreement. And here's the thing, and this is where it gets really messy, is like, did we have a clear agreement? Were you making a bunch of assumptions? I assume this was what it meant when we got married, but your father might have stepped out a lot and you might have had a different view. Like, you make so many assumptions, and it's when those things get broken. And we're like, well, I thought marriage meant this, and you thought it meant that, and now here we are down the road discovering this. What was the agreement? So all of those things are factors, for sure. And each case is unique. You really have to see what's going on for people.
Fantastic, Jane. Thank you. There's a question in the chat. My friend is married. They rent. She wants to buy her own house. Her husband is happy living in the apartment. This conversation has gone on for 6 years now. What conversations can they have? She wants a house and he doesn't. How is this ever resolved?
Well, that's a structural issue for sure. And it sounds like, so the thing that happens for us in these situations is we get stuck on apartment house rather than going, what is it about a house? What is it about an apartment? So we end up on a surface level arguing with each other, really than going like, what does that mean for you? What does that represent? And what is your history around this? What does it mean in your family to have a house or not? And there's also things like, there's a new thing called living apart together. So, I think we put too many constraints on how people can solve these problems. You're like, okay, you buy a house and I'm in an apartment, we visit, we are in both places. So there's all kinds of ways that people can address differences. But we give ourselves a very kind of narrow bandwidth of what we can and cannot do. And these are old ideas, a lot of them. They aren't necessarily what we would come to if we really had the freedom to go like, well, how do we want to sort this out? What are we really doing here? So I think they could use, I have a very skilled mediator I could send them to who could help them work through that one.
How often do you see such a conversation or conflict not really being about what people are saying it's about, though?
Most of the time.
It's just a habitual topic that really isn't what the issue is.
Correct. Yeah. Because we sometimes don't know ourselves. This is one of the beautiful skills that I've seen. It comes actually out of Ellen Bader, has a thing where she calls initiator inquirer, where we learn to take our view and bracket it and just help the other person understand themselves and then take turns. And what I've found is if I can help couples really get down into the deep parts of themselves, the stuff that's below the waterline, that there's a lot more possibility there because we know the problem that we're really trying to solve.
Can you give us an example?
Well, let's take the house and the apartment. So if we get way down there, one person might be saying, and I'm just going to make this up. So one person might be really associating a house with security. If I owned property, I feel There's all financial stuff and all the reasons that people give. But there's a felt sense of security because my family was homeless part of the time. It was in transition. And so for me, a house represents permanence, security, someplace I always have to go back to. Now, the other partner that wants the apartment can understand what the real reason is. Okay, what we're really after here is security, permanence. Ownership means to you that there's a safety issue. It's usually things like safety that are way down deep. Then the partner might be saying, I want to travel. I don't want to have financial burden and the upkeep of a home. I want a certain kind of freedom. Well, now we're down to the real issue, which has to do with freedom and security. And now the creative question is like, okay, you want a sense of freedom. You want to be able to travel. How can we do that if I also want security? But there's ways applying our creativity there. Like, okay, maybe I buy a house and you rent a space in it and travel. I mean, I don't know what it is, but we now have a way to go at the problem because we understand what it means and we understand where each person is caught. What's the value that they're trying to get out of because an apartment and a house, they're things. But where we really get stuck is, what does that mean to me? What's the felt sense, the feeling that I'm looking for in trying to do this? And that takes us to a really different place. It's sometimes really quite surprising. But getting people to actually do that, going in the cave and doing the spelunking in yourself, to find out what's in there and be able to articulate it in a way that your partner can understand, that's a bit of work. We have to actually set aside time. And so often we're busy and we just do the apartment doesn't cost so much. Well, the house is too, we just do the thing on the surface. And we're so invested in our idea of what's right that we don't actually let go enough to find out what's going on.
And we humans are so clever. We can put up all kinds of roadblocks and weirdness in order to keep distances when it may not even be about the house and the apartment.
Right. And maybe I don't want to be that close to you. I'm uncomfortable with too much intimacy. It's too small for me. Yeah. So much.
Jane, you're such a treasure. I just want to give one last chance this evening. If anybody have one question, anybody want us?
Last chance. Kiwa also has one more hand up here, so.
Yeah, so I'm planning on taking your course, and is there anything else you would recommend in terms of resources or reading or videos? I would love to get ahead of the course, and I'm looking forward to the course.
Yeah, so Stan Tatkin wrote a book recently. Well, Terry Real and both Stan Tatkin wrote some books around going from a one-self system to a two-self system. Stan wrote a book called In Each Other's Care, which is the other side of my equation here. He's taking up the topic of governance, which is like, okay, this is our little domain. How are we going to govern it? And what are the rules? Now, Stan's view is very pro-secure functioning. So he emphasizes that. And some couples may not need as much of a tight bubble as he built. Even saying that, though, this idea of like, how are we going to do this? We're the keepers of the rules. What are the rules? And what are my rights to keep you on the path with me? And I appreciate so much that he took that up as a question. Terry Real wrote a book called Us, just U.S., Us, that looks at the larger social ideas that frame our modern relationships. And I think those are two really good primers for starting to understand relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to share.
So I have just put the links you sent me. They'll be in the episode notes too. And I'm also going to put in my links in case anybody wants to know what I'm up to and wants to work with me or listen to the podcast. And I just want to ask Jane if there's anything else you want to blow your own horn about.
Well, I'll just mention a little bit about the course. Yeah. It's a program. There's 5 courses. Right now, we're taking your first cohort through the course to see that we've worked out all the technical bugs and things. because we're on a new platform. We're on a gamified platform. So there's points and bonuses and things to get you through a self-directed course. But the first 2 courses, and they're short, they're like 5 lessons in a course. The first one, we go out and we bust all the myths, all these unhealthy ideas that people have and expectations that create a lot of resentment. The second course, we ask the question, are you on the same bus and how would you know? So we invite you to take a look at your values, your wants and needs, and knowing the difference and your life goals. And then the third course, we give you the tools to talk about them. We start providing that. And so the third course is communication super skills, some basic skills that really help conversations. The fourth course is how to have those difficult conversations. So we go into unwanted repeating patterns and how to bring up a difficult topic. We talk about how to repair, how to complain so that a relationship benefits. And then the final course is enhancing joy. That's kind of the cherry on the top of the sundae, where things that can really bring more pleasure and joy into a relationship. So they're short, compact, but I'm very serious about it. These are not like pretty band-aids on a relationship. I really want to go for it. So they're intensive. That's the feedback.
Fantastic. And if you are a couple or an individual that's needing help with communicating about sexuality or trauma or numbness or dysfunction or compulsivity or any of these topics that can be so difficult for people to talk about with themselves and with therapists and with each other, that's what I'm up to. And my links will get you where you want to go if that's something you're in need of.
Yeah. I want to take a moment and just actually put a pitch in for Ali, because she's one of my star students. She really grasped the effects that bodies have and the importance of bodies in space and took it into this new form of personal geometry, which is such a lovely and effective way to do that. And she's not tooting her horn here, but she worked a lot with sexual addiction. And that's like where really you're down to the sticky stuff. So she knows so much about helping people through those places where we have such a hard time talking and actually even finding comfort and well-being in our own selves. So I highly recommend her work.
Thank you, Jane. I love you as a teacher, colleague, your friend, the only person like you in the world and in my life. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have gotten the excuse to have this fantastic conversation. I hope you'll also listen to other episodes of the Brilliant Body podcast. It is full of so many fantastic conversations with other body masters talking about the brilliance of the body, of course, thus named, and really interesting perspectives on this ongoing question and need and exploration of what this is we are as bodies, particularly in this day and age. So thank you again for being here, everybody, and to be continued. Hopefully down the road we'll meet again.
Thank you, Ali. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for being with us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We'd be so grateful if you could share it with a friend, leave a review, and rate the podcast. This really does help us reach more people in our mission to expand the global understanding, experience, and celebration of body brilliance. And just so you know, our events and content remain free in our effort to expand the meaning of intelligence, but we do gratefully accept donations to help with our operating costs. So if you have a bit extra and feel so inspired, you can find the link to support us in the show notes. While you're there, check out all the resources we've included to help you dive deeper into today's topics. You can also visit www.thebrilliantbodypodcast.com for a complete list of episodes, body meditations, and many more brilliant things. And if you're curious to explore how I work with clients and students to reclaim body brilliance, visit my website at www.alimezey.com. And lastly, a huge hearty thank you to my co-producer and co-editor, the brilliant Florence Popoff, and to Blair, Mr. One-Man Band Wilson, for our theme music. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, stay loving, and reclaim your brilliant body.